let's talk about preparing for the discovery interview. The discovery interview is really important, and it's one that you're likely going to face. If you don't face, that's okay, but let's be prepared for it. And the preparation you do for this interview is going to help you for the actual job. Essentially, what I'm going to do in this particular lesson is just show you what it means to do discovery well, and we're going to talk about how discovery frameworks can help you in the questioning and the different avenues and branches that you can go in a discussion. Okay? Alright, so discovery is the art of discovering what your customer is dealing with, what pain are they experiencing, and what could you possibly do to help them, if anything. The goal is to figure out as soon as possible if you can help them or not. If you can, great, let's keep talking. But if you realize you can't help them, then you need to move along, both for your sake and your customers. Avoid sales goggles or happy ears. To be successful in sales requires you to be good in discovery. To be successful in discovery, you must take a posture of skeptical curiosity. I'll say that again. To be successful in discovery, you must take a posture of skeptical curiosity. Never assume the deal is easy. Always be prepared for it to be hard and for there to be plenty of obstacles. The key to doing well in discovery is being able to think well on your feet. Most people get messed up in discovery when the conversation goes in a direction they're not prepared for and they don't know how to deal with it. So in every discovery session I've ever had, it's gone in a direction I wasn't prepared for, kind of. Or it has gone in a direction I wasn't necessarily expecting. But how I deal with it matters. How I dealt with that lends itself to the experiences that I've had, the preparation that I've put in, the knowledge I have on the company, on just how to steer conversations, active listening, picking up on cues. So the idea here is that when they inevitably go in a direction you weren't expecting or you don't necessarily want them to go, you need to know how to deal with it, okay? So here's how you should prepare for the discovery interview. First, you need to research the company, right? You're about to interview with a company, make sure you know the company well. Hopefully by this point, you've gotten all the way to the discovery interview. You've done a lot of research, you know the company well, but don't stop there. Continue doing research, recent company news, company background, what problems does the company solve, search the company on YouTube, to see if any company leaders have spoken about anything that would help you. The person you're interviewing with, search their name. The people you're interviewing with, search their names. Search the names of the sales leaders and business leaders of the company. You never know if you see them on Google, articles, podcasts, YouTube, and you can get some really good insight from listening to the leaders of the company, especially if, for whatever reason, it'd be great if you could find out more information about the people you're actually interviewing with. So research names on top of the company itself. Research individual people. Okay. Number two, after research, you want to understand their needs. You want to try to get an understanding of their needs. Based on the research you're doing, you should be able to get an understanding of what the problems the company faces. It's okay if you aren't 100% sure, but at a minimum, you should have an idea of the kinds of problems the company's trying to solve and where their obstacles might be. Okay? When the meeting actually starts and the role play begins in the interview, make sure you deliver a strong opening to the meeting. Okay? I like using a modified version of the upfront contract. If you don't know what the upfront contract is, you can Google it. And it's also in another lesson inside the arena. So set up the meeting well. You want to prepare engaging questions. Okay? So number 4, prepare engaging questions beforehand. Ideally, they give you a scenario to follow. So ideally they give you a scenario, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just say like, hey, we're going to have a discovery interview. Be ready. Okay, I'll do my best. Let's say that's the case. They don't give you a lot of information. You want to start to think through engaging questions you're going to ask beforehand based on the research you've done, the understanding of their needs, and just the general market. At this point, you also should have some future peers, some champions you've built in future peers that can help you, okay? So ideally, they give you a scenario to follow, something along the lines of you being a salesperson at the company you're applying for, and you're meeting with, let's say, Acme Software, one of the prospects of the company you're applying for. The goal of the discovery session is to find out information about the prospect and qualify them as a solid lead or not. By the end of these discovery calls, you should have a much better idea of the problems the prospect is facing and if your solutions can solve their problems or not. You want to structure your questions so you start with current state. All right, we're going to talk about framework just a little bit. You want to structure them so you talk about current state, the way things are today. Then you want to figure out future state. What do you want things to be like in the future? Then finally, the line between the two, the path. How will you get here, or how will you get there based on where you are today, and what have you tried so far? So here's some basic questions. And when I say basic, I don't mean like these aren't good questions. These are very good questions. But these are the foundational type questions that you should be thinking through and asking as you begin and engage in discovery sessions. All right. So some current state questions you can start to ask. So tell me about problem XYZ, right? Can you give me a recent specific example of that, the problem that you just described or you just told me about? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being this is the biggest problem we've ever faced or will ever face on this side of heaven, 1 being this problem is not a problem at all, where does this problem fit on that scale? All right, we want to try to get an idea of, as quickly as possible, again, do you have a problem? How big is the problem? Is it worth us trying to solve, right? So then number 4, how long has that been a problem? Is it recent? Has it been going on forever, right? And what have you tried to do about it so far? Number 5. Have you tried anything? Am I the first thing you've tried, right? These are all things you should be aware of. And again, we're approaching discovery with skeptical curiosity. So in my mind, I'm thinking, if this is the first thing you've tried, what are the chances that we nail it on the first try, right? Like, what else have you really tried? Like, how long has this really been going on? And so, again, skeptical curiosity. So based on the things you've tried, how have those things worked? They obviously haven't worked because we're here still talking about the problem you're trying to solve. Why haven't those things worked? What didn't work about them? Okay? And any idea what this problem's costing you, whether in dollars, time, labor, stress, is preventing you from getting a promotion? What is this costing you? What is the cost of doing nothing is another way of asking that question. If we didn't solve this problem, we just left it, what would happen? And then how many people are working on this problem right now? So these are just a few questions you can be thinking through and asking as, again, these are foundational, basic questions. Tweak these, ask different versions of these questions. But the idea here is this is a good start to get a current state of the problem and where the company is. All right, so let's get into the future state. What does it look like if you get problem XYZ fixed? Who would benefit from fixing this problem? When you do need it fixed, when do you need it fixed by, and why that date? And then finally, what if you don't get it fixed by that time? And there's plenty of other questions you could probably ask, but the idea is, what happens if we fix this? What happens if we don't fix it? Who cares about fixing this problem, right? Why is it such a big deal to get it fixed? If we got it fixed, would it cost you more? Would it cost you less? Like, what exactly are you thinking of in terms of saving here? All right, what's the why behind this? Again, so many different ways you can ask the why should we get this fixed? What would it look like if we got this fixed? Some people say, like, describe to me what success looks like. A year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. Give me a timeline of what would happen if we did get it fixed. Like, what would that enable you to do? What could you do because of this problem going away, right? And then finally, the path. So based on the things you've already tried and them not working, what do you think is the next best path to get you where you want to go, right? Why? So a lot of times people have problems and they've already thought through what the best solutions are, right? And so you want to get an idea of, what do you think the solution is? Do you think I'm the best solution, or did someone tell you to come talk to me and you're doing it reluctantly? Or do you truly think that whatever it is I'm selling is the best next step for you? Whatever they say the next path is, like, are you worried about anything in this path? What concerns do you have? Are you 100% certain this path will work? Why? Why do you think that's the best path? And what other paths have you considered? Again, there's probably a bunch of different versions you can ask of the same question, but the idea here is you want to get an idea of current state, future state, and then a path to get from current state to future state. All right? You want to practice asking these questions. You can use Udly, practice with a friend, come to one of the weekly sessions, and we can do some practice together. But the idea here is repetition matters, okay? It is important you practice going through discovery over and over and over and over again. Know your own value proposition of the solutions you offer your customers. Having a good idea of what problems you can solve will help you steer the conversation to areas that you know you can help with. And then finally, prepare supporting materials like PowerPoint slides or a one-pager, including the company logo on whatever supporting materials you might present. The idea here is you want to give more information that will help them think through whether or not you are a good fit for them. Again, we're not necessarily trying to sell them. We're not trying to persuade them or coax them into doing something that isn't in their best interest. We truly want them to choose the best solution. And we are trying to figure out if we are the best solution or not. If we are, then we should help them see that we are the best solution. We should position ourselves in such a way where it's obvious, like, okay, these guys are the best. Let's just go with them, right? But these conversations don't always go as planned, and this is where the skill and art of discovery must be mastered, right? Like, having a conversation is a skill. So sometimes a discovery will go in a direction you weren't expecting. It happens all the time. You have to be prepared for that scenario. It's your job to know what to do and to direct the conversation back to a place where it will be productive for both parties in the meeting. Right? So here's a few examples of what could happen and some ways you could deal with it. So example one, an unexpected answer. So you ask a question expecting an answer and you get a very different answer. I've asked, so what are you using today for this or that? And they've responded with, we're using Acme software for all those things. Great. I just happen to know that Acme software is my biggest competitor. That's fine. Let's dig a little deeper. So how would we handle the response? Ultimately, again, the goal is to figure out if you can help them. So let's dig a little deeper and figure out what they might be facing. Because ultimately, I also must assume like they know that Acme software is a competitor of mine. They might not know, but let's assume for a second they do know, and they met with me anyways. That's interesting. Why meet with a competitor of the vendor you're using? Maybe they're not happy with the vendor they're using. So let's figure it out. So what I'm immediately curious about is how that is going for them. How is it using Acme software? I have an idea of what I'm going to ask and what I'll say based on their responses because I've been through this scenario so many times, both in reality with customers and prospects, but also I've just practiced. So, oh, Acme software for all those things, huh? That's interesting. You're using it for everything. So great. That's pretty good. How's that going for you? And they say, it's not bad. It could be better. That's interesting. Again, remember the goal. To figure out if we can help them. To figure out if we can help them, we have to know what problems they're facing. So I'm going to dig into this pain a bit more and try to see, 1, is this a problem? 2, if it is a problem, how big of a problem is it? 3, if it's a big problem, how urgent is it? And finally, 4, is it worth trying to fix together or not? I don't necessarily ask about budget. If the problem is big enough, the money will work itself out. So that's an example of how this could go. We could split off into an incredible amount of discussions, but remember, the goal is to ask good questions that will help you find big problems that you can solve. All right, so example number 2. They want to buy your stuff right away. They couldn't be more pumped to be talking to you right now, and they basically have their giant American Express credit card, and they're ready to swipe that bad boy. This little trick can get people caught up. We call them sales goggles, where all you can see is the money hitting your bank account after a customer gives you one sign that they're interested in buying your stuff, and you get all excited and start jumping to conclusions thinking that this is the biggest sale of your life. And it could be, but you don't have it in the bag yet. Again, the posture you need to take is skeptical curiosity. Anytime someone jumps at the opportunity to buy what you're selling where it seems too quick or too good to be true, it likely is. But it's important you need to be sure either way. Ask questions. Ask the same questions you would before. All right? Man, this seems to be a pretty big problem for you. That you aren't buy our software so quickly. I'm assuming you've done a bunch of research. I'm assuming you know all the things that we can do. Can you describe the problem and why it's such a big deal for you? Yeah. It's been such a huge problem. I've been tasked directly from the CEO and the CFO to get this fixed before the end of the quarter. Interesting. Oh, wow. So what happens if you do get it fixed? What outcome will it have for the company? And what happens if you don't get it fixed? Well, if we get it fixed, it will mean we can be put in a really good position for our next round of Series D funding. But if we don't get it fixed, it means we might have to lay off people or find another way to cut costs very quickly. Yeah, that makes sense. Can you share how much you have budgeted for getting this fixed and what you think it will take to get this fixed? So the discussion from here can go on, but the big nuggets I'd be interested in figuring out are a lot of the same things before. I want to validate and qualify this opportunity. I want to make sure it's actually a problem and that they actually have funding for it, that the right people care about it, that they're willing to put in the time, energy, work, whatever it's going to take to get this thing fixed, right? So some big nuggets I'm going to ask questions about are, do they have budget specifically for this project? If so, how much? Is that budget something they could spend completely on us? Or are they also going to have to seek out other vendors to help fix this problem outside of us? How much wiggle room do they have in the budget to make sure this gets fixed properly? When do they need it fixed by and why? What happens if we do get it fixed by that date? What happens if we don't get it fixed by that date? Who cares about getting this fixed and why? What does this mean for you personally, who I'm talking to in this phone call, and professionally? Could this result in a bonus or promotion for you? What could go wrong from your perspective? What are you anticipating or what are you hoping doesn't push this off the rails? Is there anyone who is skeptical about the solution you've arrived at? Why are they skeptical and who are those people? What else have you done to try to fix the problem and why didn't that work? These are just a few nuggets that I would be very curious about as someone approached me with their credit card in hand saying, I want to buy your stuff and I need it right now, right? I'd want to qualify this a little bit more. So what if you get through all these questions and finally get to the questions about budget, and it turns out that while they might have a really big problem, their budget is 1/10 what it needs to be in order to work with you. What do? You get to the budget question and you're thinking they better have at least $500,000 to solve the problem that's this size, this big, this quick, and they say, we got 50 grand. Whoa, that's a big problem, right? Like that in itself is a problem because now they're in a depression. They can fix this giant problem with 50 grand, and you're over here like minimum 500K. And so there's a disparity. So all of a sudden, we got issues. It's your job to figure those things out as quickly as possible, and also to figure out if you can bring that, close that gap. If you can find a way, like, look, you need another 450 grand you need to bring to the table. Can you do it? They're going to say, why? Right? They're going to have more questions. So the idea here is that you figure out what the problem is, you figure out if you can solve the problem, and if you can't, you figure out why. So in this particular case, you can't solve the problem because they don't have enough money, they don't have the budget. And now you have a new problem you're trying to solve. So how do we help them get budget? Or did we scope this correctly? Are we on the same page here? Right? And so there's a million different ways this could go, and it's your job to figure out how to ultimately help the customer solve this problem. So in this particular situation, there's a bunch of things you could do. You could possibly walk away or let them know why you cost as much as you do. Maybe you could educate them on what it is you provide and how important it is to consider buying the things you offer. And maybe they haven't considered those things. We don't know. There are simply so many questions you have to work through to ensure you're on the same page with this prospect. The point is that you have to have several questions you still need to ask. And you can't get sales goggles, you can't get happy ears. You have to make sure you're qualifying each opportunity properly. Again, the goal here is to figure out if you can help them solve their problems. Don't overcomplicate it. Use the framework, current state, future state, the path. Ask really good questions. And the best thing you can do, especially as you're preparing for the interview portion of getting good at discovery, is practice. Practice, practice, practice. Repetition is the father of learning. I promise you, if you get out there and practice discovery sessions, you will get better very fast. Where do you practice? You can come to me. Arena.vet, we practice every week. We have people practicing to get into tech sales, and then we have SDRs practicing to become AEs. If you want to get good at discovery, you can join us in arena.vet. Check us out. All right? See ya.